review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a marketing and writing and editing and of course publishing books. No other than Miss Michelle Barard.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Michelle. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I have been working with authors to help them produce their best work since about 2012. In 2012, I started a company called Urban Book Editor, and that was because I was inspired by volunteering as a uh, book reviewer for a website called the Urban Book Source. And I was reading all of these great stories, but it was evident that there was a lack of editing for many of these books. And I used to write my reviews and say, edit, edit, edit at the end of most of the reviews. And finally, one day I said, well, Michelle, complaining about it doesn't help. Maybe people don't have the resources. And that's how I decided to start the company. In about 2018, I found that I was doing so much other stuff besides editing. I was doing a lot of coaching, helping people with book marketing, and just understanding that when you write a book, when you publish a book, you're actually starting a business. So I decided to shift gears and change the name of the company to Michele Barard LLC.
Miss Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your business to the world as well as your knowledge and wisdom. So let's talk about editing, writing, publishing, and marketing process.
Mhm.
Where do your book ideas typically originate?
Oh, goodness. I've had book ideas come up from dreams. I've had book ideas come up from things I've seen on TV, things that just words that people have said sometimes, just a phrase that someone says could trigger something. I do most of my writing is actually poetry. So I get inspired by even little snippets of things that can grow into a poem. Um, of course, life experience is another area. And that's what I find with a lot of the authors I've worked with is a lot of them are inspired by something from their own lives and they want to share that message with others. So that's why they write as well.
Inspiration indeed. What's the biggest challenge you face during the initial drafting phase?
I think, and I think I speak from a lot of writers when I say this, one of the challenges is to just get that first draft out, just to write, not to kind of edit as you go. And that's the biggest challenge because, listen, there's always room for improvement. There's no such thing as a perfect book. Any author, I don't care how successful they are, could go through a manuscript that they've published and say, oh, this could have been done better, or I should have written it this way. There's always something you can change. The most important part is to get that first draft done so that then you can do the iteration, that rewriting, that editing, and all the things that will get that book to be as close to perfect as you can make it.
Do you have a specific rituals, routines, or tools that are essential to your writing productivity?
Probably for me, the main thing is I get up just about every morning and write something. It doesn't matter if it's good. I write something. One of my favorite things to do is to do challenges. So, for example, Writer's Digest has a poem a day challenge that they run
Yes.
in April and November. And I like to do those challenges. Number one, because you're kind of held accountable, right? Somebody else is, you have a group of people that you're working with. So that's really nice energy to work with. But also they give a certain amount of structure because that challenge, for example, with Writer's Digest, will provide a prompt each day. And so you have something that you're writing to, as opposed to just waking up and saying, okay, time to write. And you're looking at the blank page or the blank computer screen. And you're like, okay, what am I going to produce today? If you don't have a project already in mind that you're working toward every day, that can be really intimidating. So challenges are really good to help kind of get you over that emotional hump, especially when you don't have a project in play already.
Challenges indeed. People challenges. How do you approach research for your books, Miss Michelle?
Well, fortunately, now you have the internet. Back in the day, you would have to go to the library and things of that nature. It really makes it easier to expand your view. I mean, you can literally see other cities. You with Google Maps, you can go to places and actually not feel like you're on the ground there, but you can see what it looks like from different angles. You can get a better sense of things. So I think the research now is so much easier than it used to be. So of course I turn to the internet. I'm big into technology. So I am ever grateful for the way that technology has made it easier for people who maybe can't travel to different cities. I know a lot of authors will actually travel to the city that they want to write about if they can. And if you can't, the internet makes it really so much easier for you to find the information that you want and to really get a sense of what a place is like. Another good thing to do is to interview people. So particularly if you're doing something that's got maybe historic angle to it, if it's not too far in the past, you may be able to interview people to get a sense of what things were like at that time.
Indeed. Thank you for technology. And Ms. Michelle, let's talk about editing and revision process. Describe your self-editing process once the first draft is complete.
Well, I'm a big proponent of rewriting, not just editing. So, and people sometimes get those two processes mixed up. The rewrite process could be where you literally tear apart each chapter of your book, or each poem, whatever it is that you're writing, and restructure it. You look at it with a highly critical eye. So one of the things that I recommend and I do is I put projects aside for a while so that I can come back later with fresh eyes. And I recommend that to any writer, because it's very easy for us to get attached to our words, and that time away from the project can help you detach enough where you can look at it a little more critically yourself. But there's some value to rewriting in different ways. So let's say you're doing some fiction and you're writing from the perspective of your hero or heroine of your story. You might decide, let me flip this chapter on its head and write from the perspective of the antagonist and see how they would see it. And how does that change things? How does that change the way I should think about the hero and maybe should present the hero in this scene? Because maybe there are things, maybe there are holes that you're not really seeing because you're looking at it from just one perspective. So that's one technique you can use for rewriting.
One technique, people, for sure, that is effective. How do you work with beta readers or critic partners?
Well, it's always great to have beta readers. I think that you can get a lot of good feedback from them. You also have to keep in mind that as you're getting beta readers, that they are people who are mm, not just going to tell you all the good stuff, right? So we don't necessarily want to get our moms, our cousins, our our sisters and brothers to be the only beta readers. It's very good if we can get some objective beta readers. One good thing to do is if you're in a writing group, to see if you can present your work to the group. A lot of writers groups will do that, where especially the smaller ones, they'll read each other's work or have you read during one of the meetings so that you can get feedback from the members of the group, just people who are thinking about the writing at a higher level, not just, oh, you're my son, my daughter, my sister, my brother, I love you. Yes, this is wonderful. Kind of like when you're in elementary school and you brought home the macaroni drawings, right? You don't necessarily want that level of feedback. You want to have a much more in depth feedback that can really improve your work or help you improve your work. I know one of my writers that I work with, he actually has an association that he's a member of, and he goes to them and they have beta readers who will help. So if you're not a member of an association or writers club, it might be worth seeing if there's someone who is an expert in whatever area. Let's say you're writing a fiction book about the history of Atlanta, Georgia, for example. Maybe there are historians in the area who might be able and willing to read parts of your book to check for historical accuracy. And there are a lot of people, you'd be surprised, people like to help people. And especially if you're willing and able to acknowledge them in the book.
Indeed, Miss Michelle. So, how do you handle receiving critical feedback?
Well, it always hurts when something that you think was really good isn't working as well as you would like. Um,
Yes.
but it's really a learning opportunity. So it's important for us to take that feedback that way as an opportunity for us to improve. And we also have to be judicious in the way that we take that feedback because sometimes people misinterpret things. It doesn't mean that we can't phrase things better, doesn't mean that we can't do it better. But we also have to take on board that sometimes there's a pure misinterpretation of the work in some way, some fundamental misinterpretation. And when that happens, we have to acknowledge that as well and say, what can I do to help make sure that this misinterpretation doesn't occur? Or is this a misinterpretation that can't be avoided because of maybe significant cultural differences and a lack of understanding across lines in that way? And if so, is it more beneficial for me to help explain to that person what I was trying to accomplish and then get their feedback and see if it remains the same, or if there's something that I can fundamentally change that makes that work better?
Very well said, Miss Michelle. Beautifully articulated. Let's talk about the publishing process. What publishing path did you choose? A traditional, hybrid, or self-publishing, and why?
Well, I actually created my own publishing company. I I'm going to tell you why I did that. I believe that the technology has really democratize, that's the word I want, democratize communications. And I think it's really important for our stories to get out, particularly here in the US. We have so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and yet the majority of the stories that are published by mainstream publishers don't reflect that. So I think it's important that people from different backgrounds really tell their own stories. And sometimes the best way to do that is to bypass the traditional route and either go with self publishing or a hybrid publisher.
Totally agree with you, Miss Michelle, and keep up the good work. For traditional and hybrid, what is the querying or submission process like?
Well, I haven't submitted anything to a traditional publisher in many, many, many years. Hybrid publishers, so I guess first let's start with an explanation of what is a hybrid publisher, right?
Yes, go ahead.
A hybrid publisher is a company that is a publishing company and you pay fees to them to help you with your project. They don't absorb all of the costs like a traditional publisher does. When you think Random House or Penguin, they're very particular about their projects because they put sometimes millions of dollars into
Yes.
projects to have them edited, to have them the layout done, to have the actual publishing, print runs done, all of that, and the marketing. Um, a hybrid company does usually is a smaller company. They don't have those financial resources to put into your book. So you would pay usually a package rate for editing, um, layout, cover design, whatever the elements are that you decide in your package, and possibly marketing or a marketing plan, depending on the company. That cuts their costs, it increases your costs, and it means that you make more money. Because if you go with a Random House or uh, a Penguin or someplace like that, first of all, it's much harder to get with those folks. They have a lot of gatekeepers and they get literally thousands of submissions a month in many cases. So just getting through to someone there is much more challenging. It can take years to get published with a traditional company if you don't have a track record already, you don't have an audience, if you're just starting out. Um, so just the time factor alone. But then once you do get in with them, they take on all those costs, and you typically make, as a writer, make a very small percentage of that money, as opposed to with a hybrid company where often you'll make as much as 70 or even 80% of the revenue from the sale of your book. Now there's some publishing accounting involved in that. That's basically like the retail price minus the production price. Well, actually, depending on how you're selling it. If you're selling it directly, retail minus production price. If you're selling it through a big box store, it's wholesale price minus production price, which of course lowers the margins on what you make. But you can make much more money if you go with a hybrid company. And of course, you make the most money if you self-publish. However, you then have to take on all of the costs, all of the responsibility, and everything from not just the writing, but the editing costs, the layout costs, all of that falls to you, as long along with all of the other project management aspects, I would call it.
So, Miss Michelle, as a book coach, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Short-term goals. My short-term goals really are personal. Personal writing goals, to be honest with you. I have pulled back a lot of my outreach work because I want to refocus on a lot on my own writing again, because I've spent the last decade, essentially a little more than a decade, really focusing on other people's writing, and it's time for me to get back to telling my stories. Long-term goals, though, is really to help 1,000 new writers tell their stories.
Indeed. Good luck to your goals, Miss Michelle, and looking forward for more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to write their own book?
The biggest piece of advice I can offer is to be willing to be vulnerable. I had someone tell me once, if you don't cry when you write it, no one will cry when they read it. Same thing goes for laughing or whatever other emotion you hope to elicit from people.
Very well said, Miss Michelle. Very well said. Thank you for your advice. Let's talk about the marketing and outreach. When do you start thinking about marketing for a new book, and what is the first steps you take?
Oh, I usually recommend that my authors work in parallel. So you get your first draft done, you get your rewrite, hopefully multiple rewrites done. Then you find an editor. Once you send that book to editing, you should also be looking at getting your book cover done, and you should start your book marketing plan at that point. That book marketing plan, I usually recommend 6 months to a year, depending on your following. I mean, if you have a great following already on social media, you've already got people buying your books, and you're already making the kinds of sales that you want to make, you've got a warm audience. They're already waiting for your next work. So you could probably have a shorter runway time, but your marketing runway really should be longer, easily minimum 6 to 12 months for authors that don't have much of a following already. And that's so that you can raise awareness, grow your audience, start getting that anticipation, and bring your audience along on that journey with you so that they can celebrate with you when the book is ready. So once the book cover is done, and actually, there are ways that you can use the book cover as part of your marketing strategy, or the creation of the book cover as part of your marketing strategy. But getting that book cover done gives a visual for the audience to latch onto once you start promoting your book. So that's a very good tool to have ready. People who do children's books with lots of illustrations also can do a lot of things with those characters. So maybe they don't have the cover design yet, but they've got the interior characters already kind of mapped out in their minds, or they've got an artist they've been working with to do the characters for their book. They can start marketing as soon as they've got those characters, because those are visual elements that they can use to start growing their audience.
Miss Michelle, looking back, what's one thing you wish you'd known before starting writing, publishing journey?
I wish I had known how much easier it felt to promote other people's work than my own. I think that one of the things that most of us don't realize is that we have been trained not to talk about ourselves. We've been trained not to promote ourselves. We've been trained not to brag about ourselves.
True.
And marketing can feel like bragging when you're trying to promote for yourself. But it took me a while to realize I had all these different jobs where I was helping these companies promote their product or sell their product or service. And I had no problem with that. But when it came to my own work, it was much more challenging. And that's something that I think you still deal with even after years of doing promotion work or marketing work for yourself and for clients. It really is something that's ingrained in us, most I think in many cultures, from when we're little, and it's hard to get over as an adult, that it's okay for us to talk about ourselves and to promote our works, and to understand that we're actually doing people a service. Because if they don't know about this wonderful service or this wonderful book or product that you have, they're missing out, and they're missing out because you're being shy or you're being selfish and staying in your comfort zone.
Miss Michelle, beautifully articulated. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course, my book 101 review in its fifth season too. Comedy 101 second season, and of course, my food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. And my love letters in each third season, and Movie 101 review and Music 101 in its fourth season, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Miss Michelle, what's been the steepest learning curve for you when it comes to book marketing?
I think the steepest learning curve really was that part that I was talking about before, that mindset piece. It's easy to do the research and find out where the audience is and, you know, figure out how to, you know, how many books you can sell on whatever platform or whatever. But it's the talking about yourself, it's the putting yourself out there, it's the, you know, sharing your message. And especially these days when there's so many people talking, it's very easy for us to feel like, oh, who wants to hear from me? There's so many people out there talking, there's so much content, but you will find your audience. It takes time, and when you do, hopefully you will be willing to share with them.
Miss Michelle Barard, thank you so much for helping authors, solopreneurs to build profitable, sustainable brands and hoping for more and more and more success. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy to the world?
Well, thank you again, Daniel, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to have been here and I appreciate you. I'd like to invite your audience to follow me on social media. They can find me as Urban Book Editor on all the socials. And I have a freebie that I wanted to give to your audience. They can get free access to my marketing plan blueprint mini course, which is available at rebrand.ly/mpb book 101.
Thank you so much, Miss Michelle. Please do support Miss Michelle Barard because if you support her, more and more and more empowering authors, more and more and more empowering books to come. So, Miss Michelle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for the work that you do.
More to come, people. See you soon.